Good morning, everybody. You see we are still waiting for some people to join. My name is Martijn Bonen. I'm Principal Solution Consultant at SpeakUp. And today we will be talking about how to manage risks in the challenging situation of facing a regulatory inquiry or investigation. And we have quite some subscribers today. I think about 160 people said they are interested to join. So we're still seeing the numbers increase for people participating and joining. So we wait for a few minutes, few seconds left to let everybody that wants to listen in and join us today. The webinar will last for about 30 to 40 minutes today. As you may be visiting us again and are familiar with the Webinar Geek process, there are ways to ask questions in the chat. There will also be some audience polls during the process today. Any questions that are posted in the chat, we will actually be addressing them at the end of the webinar. I see we have quite some people now joining, so let's transfer to Bruna Asensio, who's joining us today. Welcome, thanks for your time and traveling to Amsterdam for this webinar today. We look very much forward to our conversation. Please, a few words from your side to your background and your experience with this topic, and why we're going to have a very nice and informative discussion today.
Sure, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today. I think that it's going to be a quite exciting discussion. So, a little bit about my background. Been working with legal compliance for the past 12, 13 years. Have already experienced some exciting times with investigations in my past, in different areas, so from competition law to tax law, or even data privacy. So it's being really excited and really diverse. So I hope I'll be able to share some insightful thoughts with you guys today. I'm Brazilian, but live in Germany for the past 8 years. Working in compliance in a European scenario for 7 years already.
All right, perfect. So I think, we can start at the beginning. So how are these inquiries triggered? And is there anything that companies can look out to, or peers in compliance roles can look out to in advance for any early warning signs or things like that when preparing themselves for this scenario of an investigation? Yeah.
Sure. Maybe then let me divide this discussion into, right? So initially, what could trigger an investigation? I would say that authorities can put their eyes on something that they might consider that it is enough evidence for the initiated procedure. And this initial evidence can come from different channels.
Yes.
They could even come from their own whistleblowing line. So they have the reporting line. Your customers might be reporting some misdoings directly to them, or even some competitors. The same can come from media press. So you can have a really bad press release coming towards direction.
Like investigative journalism or something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could also be a spillover from an investigation that is being ongoing in a different jurisdiction, and because authorities, they keep a close relationship among them, that might call their attention to what you're doing in their specific jurisdictions. So considering those scenarios, they are just a small tip, and if that comes along, what is usually their annual agenda, so what are the topics that they're going to focus on, you might find yourself in a tough situation.
Yeah, and so this is how these things are triggered, right? And what can you do in order to kind of have a sharp mind and keep your eyes peeled for any potential risk towards your own organization?
Yeah, I would say that understanding that those are common triggers for the authority, you need to try to see how you can familiarize yourself within our organization, right? So you need to check what is coming from your own whistleblowing channel, because that could be a good tip of something going wrong. The same have a close contact with your communication PR team. What are the press releases that they are putting their eyes on, and how that might impact you in your compliance team. One other important thing is that if you have a division between your legal team and your compliance team, what is landing in your legal team desk? So you might be receiving letters, notification from competitors that might be quite relevant to observe. One last topic, but also important, is what is coming towards your customer service team. They also have a direct contact with your customer. They might not be reporting a misdoing through your whistleblower channel, but they might be sharing that directly with your customer service team.
Yeah.
So by keeping an eye on it, you might have the first impression of what will call attention from our authority, and then you can start to act on it directly. And if that happens, that the authority already put their eyes there on it, so you're already in a tough position, at least you can, before receiving any initial warning, start to address those issues. And this initial preparation and initial correction could put you in a better position when you arrive at the point that there's a letter in front of you.
Exactly. So there are basically red flags, and you have red flags which are really internal ones, but there are also red flags that can be visible to anybody, including an authority. And I think those are the particular special ones that you must act upon and treat as a potential starting point and prepare yourself for, right? And of course, I think we discussed earlier, it's also smart to look out into the competitive landscape or your industry, if any of your peers are facing current challenges that may also apply to your own business.
For sure, and that is the importance also to keep an eye on specific authorities' websites and press release, because you can also get a tip on what will be in their priority agenda. So is your competitor, is your industry under scrutiny? Watch out. See if you're doing your homework internally, right? You might find yourself in a difficult position if you wait. So pay attention to what are the recent regulations that authorities might think that it is important to impose. Exactly. Is your competitor in a tough situation due to some practice? Start to work on it, because they might even push you to the same investigation, right? I think there is a lot of practice that become, even if they are not, they might be a grayish practice, but they become so typical in a specific industry that it's highly important to see that if an authority is taking a look on it, you might not consider that as a common industry practice anymore, but you should react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very relevant, and I think what's interesting to realize is that an inquiry for an investigation by a regulatory agency doesn't have to be a complete surprise. It can, of course, still be the case, but doesn't always have to be the case. So before we move on, I think it's interesting, now that most people that want to join us today are there, to go over to the first poll and see what is the experience among the audience today with any regulatory inquiries. Have you received any inquiries from regulatories or dealt with investigations with by regulatory agencies yourself? That's interesting, right? There are some people that have experienced it, but they were well prepared, so that's good to know. But as we predicted, the people that have been exposed to it report that it was relatively challenging.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly the answer that we were expecting, right? Because even if you feel yourself to be well prepared, when you're facing a situation, that is always the feeling that I could have done things different. And it is a challenge situation, right? You never know. Even if you have already experienced an investigation, the next one is not going to be the same. So even if you prepare yourself, there will be challenge in your way for sure. And for the ones that have not experienced that, I think that they are in the right place. So we can share some insights and maybe help them if
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that relates to my second topic or question for you is to understand how can organizations prepare themselves in general or for a specific inquiry when it happens to them. To make sure that they are indeed ready, as we see that most people are here to prepare themselves to be ready.
Yeah, on that, I would say that we should consider how is this first encounter with authority taking place, right?
Yeah.
So if we're talking about a down rate, it's not something that we have tons of time to prepare. So hopefully you have done your homework and you have already educated your employees on how to address that. So if you have an authority at 6 a.m. knocking at your door, people should know who they should call to, who should be immediately on site to accompany the authority on this process. So it's highly important for those scenarios that people know who should be called in immediately. And those ones are the ones that should be more knowledgeable in the sense, okay, what are the documents that I need to check to see if, okay, this down rate can proceed.
Yeah.
This authority has jurisdiction for it. What are the equipments and documents that they are entitled to take with them, and what they would need maybe further approvals from.
Yeah, exactly. And what other ways are there that this process can be initiated?
They're the most comfortable ways. That is when you're just receiving a letter that could be only a request for information, could be already a warning, or even the start of an investigation itself. But for that scenario, you have more time to prepare because the letter might even invite you to already provide some answers, so give share some data, or you'll be invited to a conversation with them. And in both scenarios, I would say that it's better to address them as the same. So think that you have a questionnaire in front of you that you need to reply, and for that you need to put together a group of knowledgeable people that are going to help you to build this narrative. You're going to collect all the data, and if it is an in-person meeting, I think that it's highly important to treat that as a questionnaire, because you don't want to be in that meeting and find yourself in a position that I don't have all the data here, I don't have the right people in this room.
Yeah, that's very important. And for this, you want to, of course, inquire what are you expecting if you're invited for such a meeting.
And I think that is the important part for people that have never experienced that. Sometimes we are afraid to ask questions, right? You only think that you were there to answer, but it's quite fair that you ask for questions. So I'm not sure what will be the scope of the meeting. Can you share with me the agenda? I need to prepare. I need to know what is the data I need to bring there. I need to know what are the people that needs to join me. And the same goes with deadline extensions. I think that sometimes people are afraid, I'm running against the clock. I have 10 days to reply to it, but the amount of data that you need to collect and to assess will definitely require more than 10 days. So it is fair to justify that to the authority and say, hey, if you want to have a comprehensive answer here, I would need that time because this information is in that system. Or even if things happen on summer, you're going to have 50% of your team on vacation. So it is shared to ask questions or even ask for additional time.
Yeah. And so when these things happen, what kind of stakeholders do you normally deal with and how to go about that?
Yeah, for sure, you need to go to the top management initially to explain the situation. And they will be the ones also to help you to assess who should be immediately involved. By clearly understanding the questions that are posed to you, you can also assess what is the area of the business that is being affected, and then you can invite those to also take part in the discussion. Legal and compliance team, for sure, should be engaged. There is one other team that is not always engaged, but I think that is highly important to have them on board, is your communication PR team.
Yeah.
It's quite important to have them. They're really good in building narratives and put together a line of thought, so why not to engage them? And the last one, but one of the most important as well, is if you're dealing with a situation in a different jurisdiction where you're not familiar with, or even if an authority that you don't know how they work, you have no clue about their internal procedures, on board a legal firm, an expert that can guide you through
organize expert local resources to assist you, right? Yeah. And of course, I think it's very relevant to understand from the initial inquiry which area of your business is being affected and what kind of department plays the key role potentially in the situation that's being investigated, right? I think that's very interesting, and these inquiries are often about data and information, right? So, what do we do with our data and our information? Because maybe we don't want to share everything with the regulatory inquiry.
That is definitely
agency.
A good point. And because when we talk about an inquiry, the immediate thing that you need to think about is you need to preserve information, right? So you need to share that quite broadly within your organization, that it's not time to delete anything or not even trying to correct something. Because people might think, okay, I have this document, but the wording could be quite prejudicial. So let me change it. It's not time for it. So preserve your data, especially if we're talking about tax, accounting information.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have even deletion by default in your systems that you need to take care of, right?
Yeah.
So you need to put that on hold. So one important thing to involve is also IT.
Yeah.
Because they will be the one to make that operational. So make sure that no further data is being deleted, even if you have a deletion by default already set in your programs.
Yeah, and this is also something that the authority can impose on you to say, okay, there's now like a legal hold kind of situation on particular data or all data, or...
Yeah, will really depend from authority to authority, right? Because there are authorities that are going to trust you to request information and expect that you share your data with them. There are other ones that are going to say, I want to get access to your systems. This is the systems. This is the format. So it really depends.
Different ways of approaching these kind of situations. But important to keep the data in a frozen state, so to speak, and not change and delete anything. And then comes, of course, the kind of secondary response, right? So this is the initial response. Okay, there's an inquiry, they want information from us, and okay, we have the general idea of what we want to do there, but then there's a secondary element, which is, okay, how are we going to explain this to our clients or to the general public?
Yeah, that is really important because you need to build your own narrative about the facts. And that is why I said beforehand that having your communication team on board is key in this moment, because you need to trust your experts to help you in building this narrative. Because if it is one thing that is important, regardless of you're talking with authority or customers or your business partners, is to keep consistency.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot issue a rush preliminary statement, and after 3 weeks you realize that, oh wait, I will need to rephrase that on that. That is going to definitely make that people lose trust on you as a company. So that is going to jeopardize your relationship with your customers. It is going to harm your defense for sure.
Yeah.
And it can cause a lot of harm for your reputation. So keeping this consistent is key. And sometimes you just need to give some time, not issue a press release in 24 hours. Maybe you need to ensure that you have all the information in hands in order to work on it.
Yeah. So make sure that you have a well thought out plan, because you have kind of the narrative with the agency, the regulatory agency. You have the narrative internally for the stakeholders involved, like what are we dealing with and what's our internal narrative. And then there's the narrative towards the public, right? And consistency is, of course, key. And then I think there is also very important to continuously update and align those various stakeholders that may be exposed, right? Because at some point, this inquiry becomes public knowledge that it is out there, that you are being scrutinized for whatever particular issue. But then you still have your salespeople or your procurement people, dealing with potential clients, suppliers. How are they supposed to navigate all of this? Because they still want to win a deal, right?
Yeah, I really like this aspect, because when we think about an investigation, the first thing that people think is, okay, let me do this press release and make public available how we as a company are dealing with this matter. But then we forget about the corridor conversations that are taking place, or even your customer service team member that is discussing that with a customer that asks for some further information. So I would say that instead of only working and only concerning about what is being public available, be aware of those side conversations and make sure that you have a central line of communication cascading within the organization, so that your procurement guy know when he's in a meeting with your suppliers, what is the position of the company on this specific situation. The same goes for customer service, the same goes then to your press release and so on.
Yeah, so it can be quite an operation if you are a large organization to explain the situation and kind of prep and train your employees how to deal with this inquiry, right? It can be quite a challenge. And of course, it's very important, even though you may not agree with the inquiry or things like that, you want to keep a clean perspective and clean image towards the public that you are dealing with the agency in the appropriate manner.
Yeah, but it all depends also on the topic, right? Because the investigation could just have initiated because there is a preliminary suspicion about that, or they can have already something really consistent.
Concrete. Yeah.
And really concrete, and then they're already making that public available. So your narrative can also not be only I'm not guilty, because that can put you in a really tough position in the future. So in this regard, I would say, depending on the topic, you might need to confess, to say, there are some wrongdoings that we are addressing. So I would say that the core message should always be, we are collaborating with the authorities and we are working towards a resolution of that. Yeah. And do not lose focus on trying to justify or trying to say that you're not guilty, so this misdoing has taken place or not, because you don't know how the investigation also is going to advance, and you're going to find yourself in a position that you'll not be able to keep consistency anymore.
Yeah, and of course you may also not know yourself the accurate status of the particular topic, right? Could be that indeed in some local operation there is a problem that you are completely unaware of yourself, and then it's of course even more complicated to create a narrative and take a certain position on it, because maybe authority actually knows more than you.
Yeah, especially for those cases where they get access directly to your systems. Yeah. They might put their eyes on an email that had been exchanged that you never see it before. So
yeah, exactly. So this is how you deal with it in principle, right? And in doing so, I can imagine that there are common mistakes that organizations make in dealing with the situation. So are there any key attention points that you say, please be aware of this when this happens to you?
Sure. Yeah. There is, I think, one common mistake that, especially for us legal and compliance professionals, that is, while building a robust defense, we might step up on oversharing.
Yeah.
So that could be a quite significant mistake if you're sharing too much information and you're going beyond what have been asked to you, because you might be increasing the scope of something that is more narrow. So why should you, if that is not being requested from you at this point in time? There is also the fact that sometimes you affect wrongly the speed of that investigation by putting so much information there that is useless. So
yeah.
sometimes it's also in the company best interest to shut down the investigation as much as possible and make sure that you already initiate the remediation phase instead of having the investigation running over and over again.
Yeah.
So by
You could
oversharing,
also have this situation where you are doing your internal investigation into the problem, you uncover other problems,
Yeah.
but authority is not asking about those.
yes, and doesn't mean that you don't need to address those, but just mean that that is not what being asked
Yeah.
for you, right? So focus on that. Focus on being really factual. I think
Yeah.
that sometimes, especially when we just discussed about data, right? And sometimes you don't have enough data to reply to what being asked you,
Yeah.
and you might have a tendency to try to fill that gap
Yeah.
and reply that in a way
Speculation.
exactly. So you should avoid that. So even if something is not clear, so either you don't have the information, so you cannot reply to that. So just say, I don't have this
It's okay
data.
to say, I don't know.
Exactly. Or if it is unclear and you're not sure, should I go left or right? All right, just ask them. So what is exactly you want to know with this?
Yeah, yeah. So ask again for clarification and avoid filling gaps. And then, of course, you're so focused on this particular inquiry and you're trying to resolve these questions. And you can kind of get into a tunnel, right? Because I think very big part of the organization pivots towards this problem, dealing with it. But you still have your regular business and to manage as well, right? Because life goes on during this investigation. And business goes on, and risk are still out there that you would normally have your eyes focused on. So, what do you recommend? Professionals in this regard.
I would say that is definitely the second biggest mistake, right? To only focus on the problem in front of you, and especially if we're talking about a multinational, a company with a really broad footprint. Most probably the same misconduct that is being spotted in one specific country or by one specific authority might take place on different locations. So by only focus on the investigation in front of you, you might lose the opportunity to correct misdoings in other jurisdictions and avoiding that from happening. Is exactly what we spoke about the spillovers, right? So authorities are also paying attention what other authorities are investigating. Yeah. And if you're only focused on that, you might receive another letter coming from a different region because you completely ignore that for a while.
Yeah, so do you see that companies also buff up their resources during these times in order to be able to address the more holistic perspective?
Yes, I would say that is a really good moment for investment.
Yeah.
Especially for sure if you're in a legal and compliance team, is the moment to say, I need further resources, right? Could be tools, could be people, or even work with Class A externals that are also super costly. So it is definitely the moment to use that card to play with your budget a bit.
Yeah, makes sense. Because, of course, also after finding out the problems at hand, they also need to be addressed, right? So I think the initial inquiry is about, hey, is there a problem and how big is the problem? And you may or may not get reprimanded for this. But then there's, of course, the remediation of the problems.
Yeah, and I think that, sorry to share that, but if you experience an investigation and you think you are overwhelmed, the worst part comes after that. Because it's really when you need to rebuild your compliance structure, right? So especially if you did not become aware of the situation internally, so it's time to rethink, is my Speak Up program working good? Why I was not informed about that previously? Why are my employees not comfortable with sharing? So you need to work on awareness. You need to work on your risk assessment. So it is, and then for sure, all the remediations that you need to put in place, trainings, changing cultural shift. So the toughest part of the work is definitely after it, when you need to clearly understand what were the root cause and rebuild that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is quite a process, right? And we see, of course, some big, well-known cases, and these inquiries and processes, they can last for years. But these companies still have to run their business in the meantime. So how do you manage the impact on the regular business as well as your clients or your suppliers that you are working with?
Yeah, that is really complicated, and I think that is the importance to, since the beginning, had a really broad team working together with you, because you need to understand what are your replies affecting how the business is going to react, if you're going towards an undertaking, how that is going to impact the business, but most importantly, how you keep the conversation with the ones surrounding you. So how you make sure that your customers continue trusting you, your suppliers continue trusting you, and for sure, in that will really depend on the sensitive of the matter for each group, right? So if you're being investigated and potentially you're going to receive a really significant fine, your suppliers might be concerned about your financial health after all that. So you need to ensure them that, we are working together with authorities, but we are going to survive that. That is not going to affect our liquidity and so on. Same goes to your customers. So if it is a sensitive topic for them, just to name some, if you're a healthcare company and you suffer a data breach, and you're being investigated because you didn't have the proper defense measures for it, or if you're caught with child labor, slavery in your supply chain, those are really sensitive topics.
Yeah, it's a very big reputational damage also for the companies that associate themselves with you.
So it's really important that you communicate to your customers that we take that matter seriously and we are going to put all our efforts to avoid that from happening again.
Yeah, and that can be challenging, of course, during the inquiry about a particular topic, and then in the situation where you kind of already want to demonstrate that you're mitigating, but in doing so you're already as well kind of taking like a confession that indeed it is a problem. So this can be a very difficult challenge between, so to say, the legal aspect of the inquiry versus the reputational aspect of the inquiry.
For sure, because sometimes by remediating something or by changing the way you're doing something, you're basically confirming that you have acted a misdoing. And when we talk about legislation, that is quite sensitive because not everything is black and white, right? So you might have different perceptions, even from the authority, what would be the right way to address that topic.
Yeah.
So in this sense, it's better be careful with that. Really work with your externals that they have a lot of experience with the authorities to understand, if I remediate something at this point in time, will that take that against me? Because there's not going to be also a common ground for all authorities, right? If you remediate, they're going to use that against you. Not necessarily. So you need to understand what is their typical behavior there.
Yeah, all right. So maybe good to ask the audience for our other poll. I'm just curious to hear what does the audience expect to be the most challenging when dealing with an investigative inquiry. But I think also from our conversation, Bruna, we also discussed mostly about how do you deal with this in the public environment and public atmosphere with the fact that this is going on. And it's, of course, one of the most difficult things to balance out in the end, right? I mean, it's known that you are being now investigated, and okay, what do we do with it? So, very good to see that, the audience sees this as well. And I think that will help us maybe a little bit from our next topic is to see that what are some of the key lessons and takeaways that we can take from high-profile example cases in recent history.
Yeah, so without giving any specific event, I think that is one thing we can take from those high cases is the fact that if you manage it properly, you might survive it, right? So I think that there is a common fear, especially if you are experiencing a big case, a relevant case, you're always concerned about your business continuity. So those high cases prove you that if you manage them right, if you allocate the right resources, if you collaborate with the authorities, if you prepare a good mitigation plan for it, you can survive.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think also subsequently, right, there is a lot of potential and opportunity after, so to say, and in the aftermath. So you mentioned, it will probably not be the easiest part of the whole experience. However, there's a lot of opportunity there as well, right? I think we're looking at sometimes very senior leadership changes and companies pivoting.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to use that momentum to shift the company to a different direction, right? So that might probably start with the change in the leadership, because probably if you face something in that relevance, you have some issues in your culture. And culture comes from the top, so it will be a good momentum to reassess that. Furthermore, I would say that it is time to allocate resources again, and to start in the implementation of better mitigation plans, and to have more presence of compliance within the business, I would say. I think that one thing that we can take from this high profile is that if beforehand they had one compliance team and the business team and they were living in completely different environment, you see the integration after that. And one thing that is important to notice is that this integration might change completely the way you continue working. So it might affect your business model. It might affect your products that might be
rethinked. So you're really changing the whole direction of the company and a pivot in a marketing perspective. How are they going to contribute to the world, to society with what they're doing? And we've also heard that basically compensation schemes for seniors are also adjusted away from pure financials, perhaps, to more soft measures or soft metrics kind of elements in the ESG sphere most of the time, right?
Yes, for sure. I think that this is one of the things that authorities are becoming each day more strict, is if you have profit from that, that should be corrected. Yeah,
exactly. So I think we are close to our 40 minutes mark, which means we kind of come to the end of the webinar. So thanks so much for the engaging and insightful discussion today, Bruna. To the audience, of course, there is a feedback form to share with us what you enjoyed from this conversation. And of course, as introduced at the beginning, we are very curious to hear some questions from you about this topic while we have a few minutes left. So let's see if there are some questions from the audience. Yeah, so I think there is one question here relating to if there's any particular difference in the companies listed on the stock exchange.
I would say that for stock exchange companies, the difficult part here is that information gets spreaded in a fast pace.
Yeah.
Right? Especially because you have reporting obligations that other companies don't have. So you might expect that your version of the facts will be out soon, but you're also going to gain more media attention. The authorities are going to be more restricted with that, because the spectrum of people being affected is not then only customers, they're also the shareholders.
Yeah, yeah. And we see this also, of course, whether you are like a supplier towards very large businesses or whether you are actually selling something to end consumers, that your exposure also to the public is very different.
Yes, for sure. And also company size-wise, right? So if you're talking about a stock exchange company, usually you're talking about bigger company, bigger revenue,
Yeah.
more impact in the society.
Yeah.
So definitely you can expect more screening during the investigation, I would say, but also a bigger repercussion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't think there are that many questions today from the audience, so I think we'd like to extend our thanks to the audience for joining us today. Thanks again, Bruna, for your
Thank
participation and your travel to our office here in Amsterdam. So I wish everybody fantastic afternoon. Enjoy lunchtime, which is coming up, and we hope to see you, of course, at our next webinar.